is the ability for us to converse once again. And conversation is something which is near and dear to every one of us, but it's been a very long time since conversations have been cooled. We've moved away from the human interaction, and we really moved more to digital. But as a kid growing up, I actually found my passion for communications as a young kid because I discovered amateur radio. I'm just curious, anyone here ever use amateur radio? So you guys know. So it's like being able to have your friends, basically in a radio. You turn on the radio, you can find people to talk to, you can connect, you can disconnect, but being able to find that community. And when I discovered radio and realized that the secret of loneliness is basically getting a ham radio license where I could just connect with the world, that was my savior. And that basically helped me understand communications that I, to this day, am grateful for. And being able to reach out and just say CQ and have a contact come back to you, because the letter C, the letter Q, in ham radio lingo, that means CQ. And if those of you remember ICQ,
yep.
So that was actually invented and created by, Yossi Vardy was a ham operator, as one of his sons helped create the company. And ICQ was actually created by amateur radio operators, creating an internet CQ, the ability to seek contact. And those early days of messaging certainly provided a channel for us to connect with and to be. And for me, it was 1995 and the discovery of internet phones, because the first iPhone did not come out in 2007 from Apple. The first iPhone was from 1995 from Vocaltech in Herzliya. And until not that long ago, they had the domain. But iPhone enabled the possibility for people to actually talk on the internet without the need for a service provider. And that was the first time in the history of the internet where voice became an app, not a service. And that distinguishing mark, as a hobbyist, that enabled me to actually see things and see clearly. And as a ham operator, those of you who are hams, and those of you who are not, maybe you saw too many episodes of MASH, you might recall Radar O'Reilly. And as a kid, what I used to love to do is to do phone patches, that is to connect the radio with a telephone and connect people from overseas back into wherever they wanted to reach. And my parents never really cared whether I was calling into New York City where I lived or called across the country when we had long distance. But I just really was into that idea of phone patching. And so in '95, I had a mailing list. I was running the iPhone mailing list as a hobbyist. And I was just really curious about what happens next. And someone asked the question, is it possible to interconnect a telephone and a computer? And I said yes. I dusted off my phone patch. It worked. And then a month later, I launched something with the help of two friends, one in Indonesia, one in Tokyo. And we launched something called Free World Dial-Up. Free World Dial-Up was the world's first internet telephony network. And it basically allowed people to, it had no, by the way, there was no jitter buffer, no echo cancellation. It sounded like crap, but it worked. And it was proof positive that if you let people try things out, magic can happen. And in 1995, when the internet was 16 million people, we went viral. And I learned a lot from that experience, particularly how passionate I still was about communications. I learned about regulation because it took 6 months and 300 phone companies filed a petition at the FCC to basically make it so that to stop the sale and use of internet telephony software in America and to regulate people who made software as phone companies. And then magically through this mailing list, the Von Coalition was born. 110 companies who never met, through the ether, literally organized and created a coalition that exists today. All because the possibility existed of that communication. And so, that was my night job. I had a day job at the time, but luckily I got fired, saved my life, and magic happened. But for me, what I've seen with this is that it's about communicating, about connecting. And so iPhone gave me the ability to talk on the internet. And then I got really involved with Twitter back in 2006, because for me, I found Twitter to be the radio of the internet. Forget about their price performance, forget about them as a public company, but what they offered was a chance and an opportunity for us to talk, for us to connect. And it was certainly a different conversation that we would have face to face. And it offered a voice for anyone, just like radio, to be heard. And anyone, in this case, though, to be amplified. And so an amateur radio, two people could be talking and a third person could listen for an hour and kick in and say hello. On Twitter, it happens spontaneously, and there are no endpoints that are regardless. Like amateur radio, we worry about propagation. You'd be talking about high frequency bands. On internet, as long as you have connectivity, people from all over the world talk to you. And it's this art of the conversation that I actually find is actually going to come back into vogue, because the punchline of my entire presentation is that after the evolutions, which I'm going to talk about, the one thing that actually becomes cool again is talking. I've always believed that voice is the killer app. Always believed that. There are lots of other apps out there, but being able to have intimate conversations with somebody of meaning and see them right to the eyes and talk to them and feel it, that's magic. And the ability to actually understand that's the secret sauce. And for me, when I'm looking at where we're going in the future today, I'm just curious, how many people here are involved building chatbots? Seeing a handful, maybe. So a chatbot, how many people here have ever used a computer game, right? So if you've ever in your life played a video game, you've used a chatbot. Because by default, you played with a code with a predetermined outcome based on what you did. And basically it's if, then, else, that's it. So forget about the fancy names for chatbots today. If you've ever played a game, you've actually interfaced with a chatbot of the past. And what's happening today is there's this, after 20 years of voice over IP, we've had in parallel other developments going on. Developments in deep learning and artificial intelligence, we've had with natural language, and certainly the compute power has just become phenomenal. And what we're seeing today is the rise of code, known as conversational interfaces. And these are things which could be below your radar, maybe it's above your radar. Major platform companies from Amazon and IBM, and Slack and Kix and others are providing APIs. And we're at the very early stages of what will be. But if you remember the internet of 94, 95, 96, that internet was mostly brochures where you create a website. What do I put on a website? I don't know. My company? Not very interactive. It's information. And today, many of the chatbots, if you go on Messenger, if you go to where they are, it's really information. You could say it's a toy, it's a gimmick, but there's something there. Just curious, how many people here use Alexa? And how many people here are happy because they have Alexa? And how many people here, anyone here use Google Home? Someone, a few. Well, but that's the beginning. There'll come a time, by the way, when Alexa's listening to you and she will butt into your conversation, I promise you. Because right now she just listens to you. Well, there'll come a time when she will pivot. Well, she will actually interject information, and she's going to go from being passive to active voice. There'll come a time when she's going to actually be part of your conversation. And what we're seeing as far as a fundamental shift in communications is the ability to communicate. And so when you look at these chatbots that are growing up, so many chatbots that have been deployed today that are not brochures are in commerce. And those of you involved in texting and call centers may have seen a sudden shift from voice call centers to message centers. You would blow your mind to know how many of those message centers today are actually being run by AI. How many millions of people every year are actually interacting with bots and not knowing it. But that's where it's starting. It's starting right now. The mass majority of the conversational interfaces where it's being deployed are in message centers. There are a lot of brands that are doing this for fun, for branding, for opportunities to show what you can do. But it grows from there. And so where it goes from there is a world that you're not going to recognize. I promise you, I might not get the timing right, but my estimate in 7 years, when you look back to 2017 and you see how you use the internet then compared to now, you're going to think you lived in prehistoric times. Because what I'm seeing is an inflection point like we haven't seen since 98, 97. A point in time where everything we do is going to change. Now, I could be dramatic and tell you that every app is going to die and websites will disappear, but I think they will. You see, if you think about it, if you wanted to come to Florida, to come to the conference, if you didn't have someone do it for you, perhaps you went online, you looked for a good ticket price, you looked for a hotel, you looked maybe to see who was coming down. It took time. It's not like it took 2 nanoseconds. I spent 25 minutes of my own time trying to figure out where to stay, where to go, and what flights to take. But if you look at how we serve information out today on the internet, if you have a company corporate website, whether it's up to date or not, there's information about you. If you're engaging in business with other people, you are sharing information, cloud-based, some of it's private, some of it's public. But if you think about how inefficient that all is, there will come a time real soon when almost every company that you want to do business with will have a conversational interface associated with its domain, perhaps several. You yourself will be code, believe it or not. You yourself, as an entity, will be able to be a chatbot, be called something else, but you'll basically put out a request that I'm planning a trip to Florida, go Alexa, please book me my trip. And she'll understand what that means. And she's going to go out, have conversations with other conversational bots, figure out what your based on your preferences, and actually book your trip. And that's not going to happen based on going to websites. That's going to happen because the data is sitting in different cloud-based areas where it's going to be well known where it is, but it's not going to be visible to you. Websites become vanity sites, become markers on the highway that you were there. Websites are something which you can use as a pointer, but not necessarily for business anymore. The need for apps will dramatically go away, and if you ever talk to the app developers, you're already seeing a quick slide of how many downloads are not happening. Because in areas where chatbots are dominating today, it's taking over. It's taking over in droves. And where you're seeing the opportunity here is to be part of the bandwagon. And the message I have for you today is, if you want to see what the hot space is, it's where you have natural language interfaces running with AI. What does it run over? Voice over IP. Voice over IP, that's right. The technology which is inherent, which you take for granted, which some of us didn't take for granted for many years, that magical sauce is what's going to drive $1 trillion of business in the not too distant future. There will become a time, I've already seen a demo of this, I'm sure it's going to happen for others, forget about IVRs, over. I've seen a demo just the other day of someone who had a conversational interface connected to a PBX. So no more IVR hell, no more, gone. Now it's like, no seriously, gone, right? All of a sudden you now want to talk to somebody, you'll talk to you. Of course you may get freaked out because it's like, hi, welcome to Pulver.com, how can I help you? Can I talk to Jeff? Oh, who's calling please? And of course you're talking to a bot. And then I get to figure out, do I want to talk to the person or not, and it will go through. Kind of spooky, right? And by the way, if you want information about the company, the bot can be programmed to do all that, and it will sound just like whoever you want it to be in any voice. We've evolved the technologies on phonemes so much that with a little stretching, you can actually shoot to the moon and get anyone's voice there. You can record any friend, anybody, and you can actually voice font it into whomever you want to be. But even if just recorded voice that's naturally available, this changes everything. So when you look to the future of communications and you understand how much time is being spent on wasted time trying to do one task, multiply that times almost 1 billion people, the 80% of the world that Facebook represents, though, the almost 2 billion people online, that's a lot of wasted time. Chatbots will change that. The evolution of communications is still underway, and there's going to come a time where everything changes. Where what you thought you had, so if you think you have your web strategy done, sorry. If you think your app is the killer app forever, I'm sorry, it's not. And or not sorry, really, but the artificial intelligence part of this is just the beginning. And so, we live in a conosphere. My friend Chris Fine coined this term. I kind of borrow it from him from time to time. And that's the environment where we talk one to one, one to many, many to many, many to one. But in the new world, we also have us to machines. Machines to machines, machines back to us. And when we're wearing devices, and these devices are talking to each other and leaving us out of the conversation, is that a higher level of consciousness? Or are we just irrelevant? I don't know. But that's happening now too. And so when I look to the future of communications, I have never been so excited about where the future goes, because when we have the ability to have deep learning and to understand where this world is happening, we get to actually get recentered. We have a chance to actually have meaningful conversations with people again. Of course, if it's 3 people chatting in a room, don't be surprised if 2 other objects are there are robots cutting in and jumping in. But it can happen, and if any of you have ever watched science fiction in the past 50 years, a lot of the stuff that was visualized by Gene Roddenberry and H.G. Wells and many other people, that's happened. We need sci-fi writers and comic book writers to somehow tell us where the future is going. And we have to hire some of these people to create the magic that we want to rely on. But it is happening in the labs. And over the next 7 years, what you're going to see is a future unfold that's going to blow your mind. In terms of, forget about what you're used to, every assumption you know is wrong, long live the future of disruption. And so, there is a lot of buzz about job loss from artificial intelligence. There's a lot of buzz about ethics that we have to figure out, because we do. There's a lot of things that haven't been figured out, and I am fearful about the dark side growing, and so I kind of work for the light side of things, feel that force, if you will, but It's to understand that there's forces greater than us that are evolving and pushing us forward. And the last 20 years ago, I never could have imagined what was going to happen in the evolution of internet communications. Some people still struggle to make unified communications happen. It happens in some places, doesn't happen in other places, but it's happening. But what's going to be unified in 7 years is going to be us humans figuring out for the very first time how to talk to those robots. And maybe how those robots are going to be organizing us. And how information is going to be shared in a very efficient way, because don't forget, when it's bot-to-bot communication, they're not speaking voice, but they will communicate. And our ability to be in a position to be more efficient, and if you figure out, by the way, how many minutes of time we will save by the deployment of these bots, you no longer will be bored playing games on your iPhone. You will actually have time to actually have more connections with people. And I am seeing, though, in addition to this, and I mentioned this with this conference I'm doing about star space in the future, I have found that there's a level of spirituality in the world that's rising. There's a consciousness that's growing. And I think it's all connected to what's happening in terms of the use of these technologies. And I'm remiss to say that it's just one or the other. I think it's a combination of everything. And when I look at where the future is, in many ways it's never been so bright, never been so scary. But if you think about, I was just recently on site back in November when I got all these promotions to buy things for leading up after Thanksgiving with Black Monday and Cyber Thursday and Cyber Friday. I kept on thinking, wouldn't it be nice if somebody bought me a gift that I always wanted but nobody knows? A gift that I would never tell anybody I want. Then I realized the one entity that knows what I really want is my browser. Because my browser knows what pages I'm going to and clicking away, maybe what lenses I'm looking for my camera and clicking away. So I do predict that in the near future, your bot may be your best friend one day and will buy you a gift. Something that only it knows that you really want, because it knows your habits. Might get you in trouble though. And so, when I looked at these, and chatbots are going to change their name, it's really not so much just about the bot, but it is about code. I think we have an opportunity, by the way, to introduce a new computer language. I mean, how many people here learned BASIC when they were kids? Really? No. I took it for granted. I took the idea that language is going to be something which we learn, and somehow we've stopped evolving some languages. I hope in the near future there'll be a new language for bot creation that's universal, that's not tied to anyone's back-end APIs. So people can just write code. For whether you're 7 years old or 87 years old, you can write code that's meaningful for you. And as much as BASIC was meaningful for us as kids growing up, for the generations that are coming forward, being able to interconnect the intersections of AI, computing, and the conversation, I think a bot language is needed, and hopefully will come forward. So anyway, I want to thank you for my time, for listening to me today. So I'm Jeff Pulver. You can find more information about me on my website, jeffpulver.com. If you are passionate about the stars, and I'm always happy to have those conversations. But I'll just leave you on this note, and this is a life lesson I learned since I got involved in this industry. A few years ago, if you haven't seen me in a while, it's because between 2012 and 2013, I figured out how to outsource about 120 pounds. And I outsourced it because I didn't say I lost it, because if you lose something, it kind of finds you. So I outsourced the weight, and then I got into really even better shape. But I was actually 7 hours before being in my first ever organized race, and I was sitting down having lunch with 2 friends in Tel Aviv, and I had a seizure. And the seizure resulted from dehydration and low electrolytes. I didn't know that. But the physical impact of the seizure put me in a position where I fractured basically dislocated my right shoulder, fractured 2 bones, and tore 7 muscles off my bone, which took me from a state of very good health to being basically dependent upon somebody, where I couldn't button my shirt or tie my shoes. And I started to think about life. And I started to understand that you can put off everything you want to, but sometimes you have to appreciate the moments to breathe and to be around the people you like, and to understand that at some level, that's all that matters, maybe. So I dedicated my Instagram back then to sunrises and sunsets. If you've ever on Instagram, I'm Jeff Kenny Pulver, Kenipulver. I figured for my friends who are too damn busy in their lives to look out and pick a sunrise and sunset, I'd post photos. And I spent my time basically starting to understand and appreciate every moment matters. So I don't take anything for granted at all. I try not to put off things that I could put off for tomorrow, and I try to be present. And I learned mindfulness a very hard way, because right before this accident, which took 7 months to recover from, and then I had PT for another few months, I was working on a conference, and while I was high in oxycodone, I put out an email to my friends saying, hey, I got hurt, and I can't do this conference anymore. This is what happened to me. And I got about 600 emails back, and I read one email, I open it, I try to reply, but I was in pain, so I hit next, I read another one, and then I finally closed my laptop, and I realized that I had to heal. I realized that I actually had to focus on me, and it took my entire life for me to get there. But I learned mindfulness by being in the position where I had to be mindful for myself. And so, while I'm really passionate about the future of communications, really passionate about where things are going, I have a great appreciation for every moment we have. And some of the cliches you hear about growing up all of a sudden start to matter. And for me, a lot of songs I used to listen to, those lyrics now resonate with me deeply. So I just want to wish you all great health and great opportunities to be in every moment that you can be yourself. And thank you for your time.